What's your message to Michigan voters in terms of the economy? We have auto workers who are being laid off and those who fear that they might be laid off. The average person can't afford groceries or their rent. And recent polls in Michigan show that Michigan voters believe that Donald Trump would do a better job with handling the economy and bringing jobs back. What do you say to that?
So, Kamala Harris just delivered a closing argument in DC last night. In my opinion, her campaign has come to an end. Her final message is Joe's message. Trump's a fascist, Trump's a dictator. That message wasn't working for him, and it's not working for her either. The close was focused on fear and fascism, not about the future. She said she's a candidate for change, yet she's given a speech from the same location that Trump spoke at on January the 6th. A week before the election, and Kamala isn't in a battleground state, she's in DC talking about Jan 6. Let's look at some highlights and try to make sense of it.
And Donald Trump has told us his priorities for a second term. He has an enemies list of people he intends to prosecute. He says that one of his highest priorities is to set free the violent extremists who insulted those law enforcement officers on January 6th. Donald Trump intends to use the United States military against American citizens who simply disagree with him. People he calls, quote, the enemy from within. America, this is not a candidate for president who is thinking about how to make your life better. This is someone who is unstable, obsessed with revenge, consumed with grievance, and out for unchecked power. Donald Trump has spent a decade trying to keep the American people divided and afraid of each other. That is who he is. But America, I am here tonight to say that is not who we are. That is not who we are.
Seriously? That's not who you are? She said Trump's got a list of his enemies and will use the military to go after his political opponents. Well, he never went after Hillary. Every politician has an enemies list. The only difference is that Trump hasn't prosecuted anybody. Biden and Harris have an enemies list. They prosecuted Trump, Steve Bannon, Rudy, Weisenberg. While she's calling Trump on fascism, a lot of Dems now are saying this is a mistake. It's a losing message to shame people into voting for her. Her message is two-sided. She's saying all this on one hand, but on the other, she wants to find common ground, find common sense solutions, tone down the rhetoric. This whole idea of turning the page. I just don't think anyone's buying it.
On another subject, politicians have got to stop treating immigration as an issue to scare up votes in an election. And instead treat it as the serious challenge that it is that we must finally come together to solve. I will work with Democrats and Republicans to sign into law the border security bill that Donald Trump killed. When I was Attorney General of a border state, I saw the chaos and violence caused by transnational criminal organizations that I took on. And when I am president, we will quickly remove those who arrive here unlawfully, prosecute the cartels, and give Border Patrol the support they so desperately need. At the same time, we must acknowledge we are a nation of immigrants. And I will work with Congress to pass immigration reform, including an earned path to citizenship for hardworking immigrants like farm workers and our dreamers.
Okay, so let's just say we believe her and she wants to fix the immigration problem. So why, Kamala, Did you end the policies that Trump put in place? The Remain in Mexico, Catch and Release, Title 42. These are all things that you and Biden ended the first day in office, almost 4 years ago. She's running on problems she created, and as vice president, the person in charge of the border has not done a thing about it.
Look, we know who Donald Trump is. He is the person who stood at this very spot nearly 4 years ago and sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol to overturn the will of the people in a free and fair election. An election that he knew he lost. Americans died as a result of that attack. 140 law enforcement officers were injured because of that attack. And while Donald Trump sat in the White House watching as the violence unfolded on television, he was told by his staff that the mob wanted to kill his own vice president. And Donald Trump responded with 2 words: "So what?"
All right, look, so in my opinion, there's a lot of disingenuous statements made right there. For example, she said, Americans died. Let's say this accurately, right? There was one unarmed American, Ashley Babbitt, that died, and she was shot by a Capitol police officer. One thing I think we can all agree on here, there's a lot of things that happened on that day that I don't think we'll ever really find out the truth of what happened. And I think another obvious observation to make is that if Trump really did all the things that she just stood on stage and said he did, why hasn't he been charged yet? It's been 4 years. So far, none of this is a winning argument. She's just appeasing her base. She's not reaching out to the undecided or the independent voter. 80% of her speech is about Trump. She's not actually saying anything about what people want to hear, which is how their lives will be better under your leadership. Earlier yesterday, she did some interviews with local affiliates. They tried to ask some familiar questions, but we already know what the answers are.
What's your message to Michigan voters in terms of the economy? We have auto workers who are being laid off and those who fear that they might be laid off. The average person can't afford groceries or their rent. And recent polls in Michigan show that Michigan voters believe that Donald Trump would do a better job with handling the economy and bringing jobs back. What do you say to that?
Well, let's start with this. I come from the middle class, and I'll never forget where I come from. My mother worked very hard. She, by the time I was a teenager, was able to save up for our first home. And I understand that grocery prices are still too high. I get it. I know your viewers get it.
We don't care where you're from. We want to know what you're going to do if you get into the White House. How are you going to be different from Joe? Are you going to make the lives of Americans better? Why is this the first thing she goes to every time? It's like she has a preset answer for about 6 questions, and that's it. She uses the same ones over and over again. Something else happened yesterday during Kamala's speech, and I'm sure you've seen it already because it's gone viral. We haven't seen the last of it. I'm going to talk about this more in the next video. Watch.
Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is just orders.
So I'd like to know what you think about this. Please leave your comments in the section below, and also please don't forget to like and subscribe.